The Colorado wind used to sing like an ancient prayer on winter nights. But that dawn, at exactly 3:07 a.m., the sound was different. A metallic hum, deep, as if the very ground were vibrating beneath Ethan Parker's forgotten farm. The man woke from a dream he couldn't remember. His heart beat slowly, heavily. The old clock on the bedside table marked time with an insistent tick-tock, each second seeming longer than the last. Outside, the sky was an ocean of silver and cold, and something, some living thing, was moving in the darkness. Ethan got up, still in his nightclothes, grabbed the lantern he kept by the door, and listened. The sound came from the field, distant, a mix of crying and machinery, creature and wind. For a moment, he thought it was a truck on the road, but there was no road nearby, just miles of wheat, mountains, and silence. The air smelled of rain, and a blue flash crossed the horizon. He frowned, pushed the door open, and a shiver ran down his neck. The ground seemed to pulse. The man hesitated. He'd seen strange storms before, but never anything like this. He walked to the barn, the lantern's beam trembling in his hand. Each step creaked under the damp wood. On the horizon, a bluish mist began to rise, like living smoke swirling over the wheat field. Ethan held his breath. The sound turned into a lament, a muffled cry that made his chest ache. It was a sound only a mother could make. He knew that, because he'd heard one just like it years ago, when he lost his wife in the hospital, and the whole world seemed to collapse into silence. Now, that same sound echoed from a place that shouldn't exist. He followed it, barefoot, the lantern oscillating between shadows and distant lightning. When he reached the clearing, what he saw made time stop. There, in the center of the flattened field, knelt a tall, translucent figure, surrounded by a golden glow that seemed to breathe. In her arms, a smaller body trembled, wrapped in a faint light. Almost fading, the figure rocked the little one like a mother cradles her child, emitting soft sounds, and each note vibrated inside Ethan's chest, not in his ears. Fear froze him, his brain told him to run, but his heart, the same heart that still held the echo of lost love, said something else. When the creature lifted her face, he saw golden eyes, liquid, like stars weeping. There was no rage in them, no threat, just despair. The wind fell silent for a moment, and she looked at him with an expression impossible to translate. Ethan took a step back. The creature then moved slowly and extended her arms, offering the little being to him. "No, I can't," he whispered, without realizing he was speaking. But her gesture wasn't an attack. It was a plea. The little being breathed with difficulty, its body pulsing between shades of blue and silver. Like a heart in collapse, Ethan swallowed hard. His mind tried to understand, but his soul had already decided. He dropped the lantern on the ground and approached. The light enveloped his hands, warm, alive, almost human. When he touched the little one's body, he felt a gentle shock run up his arm. Not pain, but connection. The larger creature stepped back slightly, watching. The sound around them diminished, and the world seemed to hold its breath. Ethan lifted the fledgling into his arms, hesitant, and its weight was as light as a bird's. "It's okay," he murmured. He didn't know if he was speaking to himself or to her. The golden gaze of the mother shone brighter, and a luminous tear slid to the ground, evaporating like aurora vapor. Ethan gave one last look at the kneeling creature. There was something sacred in that scene, a pain that transcended worlds. He began walking back to the house, the fledgling wrapped in the towel from his old workshop. Behind him, the field remained still, the mother watching, unmoving. But when the wind blew again, it carried a low, deep sound, a murmur that seemed to say, "Trust." And for the first time in years, Ethan Parker obeyed a voice that didn't come from inside his own head. The cold bit at Ethan's skin as he crossed the yard with the little being in his arms. The blue mist behind him remained still, as if time had stopped there. The mother, that luminous and silent figure, stayed at a distance, watching every step he took to the porch. The man pushed the door open with his shoulder and entered, trembling. He placed the little one on the kitchen table, turned on the light, and caught his breath upon seeing it up close. The skin was translucent, almost like wet glass, with veins of light running through it, pulsing slowly. There was something fragile, and at the same time indescribably beautiful about that being, as if each beat were a cry for help to the universe. Ethan rushed to the cupboard, grabbed an old towel and a wool blanket. He covered the little one carefully. Its body was warm, but it trembled. He then opened the fireplace, struck the match, and watched the flame come to life, spreading orange and gold across the cold walls. Outside, the sound of the wind changed. It was the same lament that had woken him, but softer now, like a prayer. Ethan approached the window. The mother was there, motionless, her eyes fixed on him. The rain began to fall in fine drops, illuminated by the golden light radiating from her body. I'll try, understand? I'll try, he spoke aloud, not knowing if she could comprehend. Returning to the table, he grabbed a bowl, mixed warm water and a bit of honey. What he had. He soaked a cloth and pressed it to the little one's lips. A small reaction. A puff of light escaped. Weak, but alive. Ethan felt his chest tighten. He wasn't a doctor. He didn't know what he was doing, but he knew what it was like to lose someone, and he couldn't bear to watch another life fade before him, human or not. The clock read 3:45 a.m. The house smelled of smoke and fear, but the man continued. He placed the little one near the fire, covered it up to the neck, and knelt beside it. "Stay with me, little one," he murmured. "Stay with me, for an instant." The air seemed to vibrate. The glow pulsing in the creature's body responded to the sound of Ethan's voice, as if it understood. Every word! He leaned his forehead close and touched it, gently. The warmth was intense, alive, pulsing outside. The wind stopped. The door opened slowly without a sound. The mother was there, standing in the doorway, her golden light bathing the floor of the room. Ethan turned, but he felt no fear. She didn't advance. She just watched. A golden tear rolled down her face and fell onto the wood, burning it slightly, as if each drop carried living energy. The man looked at the little one, then at her. For a second, he understood without words. She trusted him. That moment transformed something inside him. The hardness of years of grief began to melt. He realized that, even coming from another world, that mother felt the same love any human would feel. The dawn passed in silence. Ethan kept vigil, watching the little one's light stabilize, breathing in a more steady rhythm. When the first ray of sun crossed the window, the mother took a step forward, standing in the threshold. The morning light mixed with the golden glow of her skin, creating an indescribable halo. For a moment, Ethan was certain time had stopped, as if all of nature were. Witnessing that silent exchange between worlds, she looked at him one more time. She said nothing, but her gaze spoke a language he understood with his heart. "Thank you," Ethan breathed deeply, exhausted. He sat in the armchair, his eyes still turned to the table, where the little being now slept. The mother took a step back, then another, until she slowly disappeared into the light dissolving in the field. In that instant, Ethan understood that something had changed forever. He didn't know what would happen next, if she would return, if the little one would survive, if the world would discover it. But one certainty burned inside him. He was no longer alone. The wind blew softly again, and, for a moment, he swore he heard a distant voice echoing in the air. A light melody, almost a whisper, saying, "Life finds a way, always." Ethan smiled, tears in his eyes, as the fireplace fire continued to dance in the reflection of his window. Before we continue, if this story has touched you in any way, subscribe and leave your like. That's how you help spread messages like this to more people who believe there's still kindness, even among the stars. The hours that followed seemed to stretch like a dream, refusing to end. The fire had already consumed half the wood, and the sun began to rise shy behind the Colorado hills. Ethan Parker hadn't slept a wink. Seated on the edge of the armchair, he watched the little being breathe more steadily. The light inside its body, previously flickering and irregular, now pulsed gently, as if a new heart had learned to beat. Outside, the mother remained motionless, seated under the fine rain. Her golden glow mixed with the steam rising from the ground, turning the landscape into something almost sacred. She didn't seem like a monster, nor a threat. She was just a mother waiting. Ethan looked at her through the window and for an instant felt something he couldn't name. It wasn't fear. It was understanding. As if an invisible thread connected him to that creature. Something that crossed language, body and species. When the little being opened its eyes for the first time, time stopped. The irises were silver, deep, with tiny spirals that swirled slowly, as if the universe fit inside them. The glow reflected off the walls, scattering improvised constellations across the ceiling. Ethan pulled back a little, surprised, but the little one wasn't frightened. It emitted a light sound, something between a sigh and a melody, a sound that didn't come from the throat but seemed to vibrate in the air. And, strangely, Ethan understood it. It was a thank you. He smiled. His eyes welled up. He knelt beside the table and spoke softly. "You're okay now, aren't you?" The little one blinked slowly, and the light in its chest shone in response, as if agreeing. Ethan placed his hand on the cloth covering it. Its skin was warm, but not ordinary warmth. It was a living temperature, like the touch of the sun on skin. For hours, Ethan talked to it as if it were a human child. He told it about his deceased wife, about the barn he had built himself, about the nights when the silence was so vast that he talked to himself just to hear a voice. The little one listened, in silence, as if understanding every word. And then something impossible happened. When Ethan mentioned his wife's name, Laura, the little one emitted a soft sound. And, in response, the glow in its chest formed a golden spiral, the same symbol the mother had on her hands. Ethan froze. A subtle presence, almost spiritual, crossed the room. He felt, like a whisper in his mind, a phrase that didn't come from anywhere. "You are safe." The man brought his hand to his head. Startled, he looked around, but he was alone, or almost. Outside, the mother lifted her face and looked at him, as if confirming what he had just felt. The communication wasn't made of words. It was made of trust, of something born between souls, not between mouths. Time followed its slow course. Ethan improvised a bed with clean sheets, placed the little one in it, and watched as it slept. Outside, the mother remained steadfast, motionless, her gaze turned to the window. Even from a distance, he felt she was thanking him with every breath of her child. In the afternoon, the rain stopped. Ethan opened the door. The air smelled of earth and electricity. The mother stood and, for the first time, approached. The sunlight reflected on her translucent skin, revealing veins of energy running like rivers beneath the surface. She didn't speak, but when her eyes met Ethan's, he understood everything he needed to. Only a few steps separated them. Ethan lifted the little being into his arms and brought it to the door. The fledgling opened its eyes again, and the mother emitted a deep, harmonic sound, not a cry, but a song. That sound made the ground vibrate slightly, and the field leaves began to dance in circles. The man knelt and placed the little one on the threshold. The mother watched, her eyes shining in shades of gold and silver. The little one extended a small hand to Ethan, a simple gesture, but one that made his heart collapse. "I know," he murmured. "I felt it too." In that instant, the light of the two united for a brief second. A golden thread crossed the space between them, and, inside Ethan's mind, images arose like memories that weren't his. Mirrored seas, mountains floating under crystal skies, beings made of light, walking among transparent towers. Their planet, the lost home. The connection dissolved with the same gentleness with which it began. The mother retreated, lowered her face and, in a slow gesture, touched the ground with her hand, a salute, perhaps a "see you later." Ethan responded instinctively, placing his hand over his chest. The sun was now high, the sky clear, and for an instant, the world seemed to breathe with them. The fledgling fell asleep again, this time peacefully. The mother moved away and disappeared among the reflections of the field. Ethan stood in the doorway, not knowing if he was dreaming, but something inside him had changed forever. The weight of loneliness felt lighter, and faith not in religion but in kindness, had returned. As the day ended, he sat on the porch and watched the sunset tint the horizon. The air was calm, with every heartbeat. The little one breathed better. And at some point in the sky, a star began to twinkle brighter than the others. Ethan lifted his eyes and whispered, his voice choked, "If it's you, thank you." And that night, for the first time in years, he slept in peace. The impossible was alive, and it trusted him. The days passed with the same reverent silence of a forgotten church in the middle of the desert. Life around the farm seemed suspended between two worlds, the human and the inexplicable. Ethan woke early, fed the chickens, chopped wood. But the routine now had another purpose, caring for the little being that slept by the fireplace, wrapped in blankets and light. The glow in its body had stabilized, and each beat of that luminous heart brought the man the living reminder that, for some reason, the universe had chosen him as guardian of something sacred. During the night, the mother continued to come. She stood at the edge of the field, motionless, like a sentinel made of gold and wind. She didn't approach, but her presence alone brought Ethan a kind of calm he hadn't found anywhere since Laura was gone. That being looked at him like someone who trusts, who understands the pain of loss without needing words. Between them, an invisible pact had formed, a silent alliance that united compassion and destiny. The little alien began to explore the surroundings of the house, moving hesitantly but curiously, touching objects, books, the metal of the fireplace, emitting gentle waves of light each time it was enchanted by something new. Sometimes it imitated human sounds, the clink of a spoon, the crackle of the fire, and even the timbre of Ethan's voice. The man smiled. It was like watching a child learn the world for the first time, and in every gesture there was a tenderness that disarmed any fear. But peace is a luxury that destiny never allows to last long. On the fifth night, Ethan heard the distant sound of engines, a grave hum, rhythmic, cutting the sky like blades. He went out to the porch and saw the lights, 3 white points moving slowly above the mountains. Helicopters. His heart froze. The news had spread. Mysterious lights in Colorado. The radio voices had said for 2 days. He knew it was only a matter of time before they arrived there. He ran back inside. The little one slept, and its body pulsed in shades of blue and silver. Ethan looked at it and understood their time was over. He felt a lump in his throat. The same lump that had accompanied him at Laura's funeral. The same one that choked him whenever he thought of losing something he loved. But now the loss wasn't human. It was cosmic. As the noise of the helicopters grew closer, the wind began to blow hard. The trees bent, and the wheat field seemed to undulate like a restless sea. Ethan knew what he had to do. He put on his coat, wrapped the little being in the blankets, and headed toward the field. The rain began to fall sideways, icy, but he didn't stop. Each step was a weight, a goodbye that tore him apart inside. When he reached the clearing, the mother was already waiting. She stood, enveloped in an intense light, golden and silver, as if the entire sky had descended to earth. The wind swirled in spirals around her, lifting the wheat and forming luminous dust whirlwinds. Ethan stopped a few meters away, his heart racing, his eyes teary. The little one in his arms stirred, weakly, and emitted a sound that seemed like the echo of a distant violin. "I know," Ethan murmured, his voice breaking. "I know I have to let it go." He took a few steps forward and knelt before the creature. The mother tilted her head, watching every movement with a mix of reverence and pain. Ethan extended his arms and placed the little being on the wet ground, between them. The fledgling's glow intensified for an instant, as if the very air breathed along. The mother emitted a deep and harmonious sound, a single note that made the entire field vibrate. The ground beneath Ethan's knees trembled slightly. He lifted his eyes and saw something he would never forget. The golden tear that rolled down her face didn't fall. It floated in the air, transforming into a small sphere of light that slowly dissolved. Like stardust, the little being looked at Ethan, hesitated, and extended its hand, a small, translucent hand that touched the man's calloused fingers. It was the purest touch he had ever felt. In that instant, a wave of energy coursed through his body, and his mind was flooded with images. Floating cities under violet skies, seas of crystal mirroring 2 suns, and a people of light raising their hands to the stars. Among them, the mother and the child together, looking toward a horizon no human would ever see. Ethan cried, not from sadness, but from a comprehension that transcended words. He understood that this wasn't the end, but a return. That true love isn't possession, it's surrender. That sometimes, to honor life, one must let go. The mother approached and with delicacy touched his shoulder. A flash crossed the field. For a second, Ethan felt as if the universe itself breathed through his body. A profound peace enveloped him. A peace so deep it seemed to dissolve all pain, all fear, all loneliness. Then, the air vibrated. A high-pitched, almost inaudible sound cut through the space, and the field began to light up in blue. The helicopter lights were already visible in the distance, approaching. Ethan retreated, the wind nearly knocking him down. The mother raised her arms, and an invisible wave of energy spread. The grass bowed. The flames in his distant house's fireplace went out, and the sky opened in silence. No explosion, no noise, just light. The little beings shone intensely, and the mother's body wrapped in golden beams. In seconds they disappeared, not in smoke, not in destruction, but in ascension, as if they had dissolved into the very air. Ethan remained kneeling in the mud, his face bathed in tears and rain. The field was now empty. The wind had stopped. Only the sound of the helicopters echoed in the distance, searching for something that was no longer there. He rose slowly, his body trembling, and looked at the sky. Nothing. No ship. No light, just the stars, calm, distant, silent. And it was then that he understood. Love doesn't need return when it fulfills its purpose. Ethan walked back to the house, soaked, exhausted, but with a heart at peace. When he crossed the door, he saw that something had changed. On the table, where the little one had slept, there was a mark. A golden circle burned into the wood, pulsing faintly, as if breathing. He touched it and felt a mild, familiar warmth, and a phrase whispered inside his mind. The life you saved yours too. And for the first time since losing Laura, Ethan Parker smiled without pain. The night ended calmly. The man fell asleep in front of the fireplace, while the Colorado wind returned to singing its ancient song. But now, the sound was no longer solitary. It was the voice of the universe, whispering through the stars he had just learned to understand. Winter passed slowly, as if time itself needed to heal. The Colorado fields returned to being covered in snow, and the silence of the mountains once again took hold of everything. But inside Ethan Parker's old house, something remained different. A kind of soft presence, almost imperceptible, as if the very matter of the house had been touched by a miracle. There was a strange warmth coming from within the walls, a constant feeling that someone, somewhere, was still watching him with gratitude. Ethan resumed his routine, but the routine no longer recognized him. Mornings were no longer a burden. Loneliness, which before weighed on his chest like a stone, now had the light weight of memory. He chopped wood, cleaned the barn, fed the animals, and talked to himself, not out of desperation, but like someone conversing with the wind. The world had returned to normal, at least for others. For him, normal would never exist again. One morning, while having coffee by the window, something caught his attention. On the porch rested a small transparent stone the size of a walnut. There were no footprints, no rain marks, and the strange thing was that it pulsed, a living bluish light, soft, almost breathing. Ethan picked it up carefully. Upon touching it, a warmth coursed through his fingers, up his arm, and reached his chest. His eyes filled with tears before he even understood why. Suddenly, images began to form in his mind, quick, vivid, impossible. He saw the little being he had cared for, now grown, flying over lilac plains surrounded by crystal towers. There were 2 suns in the sky and seas of light moving like liquid silk. And there, standing, the mother, the same golden light, the same gaze. But now, serene, happy, she watched him with silent tenderness, and Ethan felt, like an echo in his soul, the same phrase he had heard months before. You are safe. He knelt right there on the porch and cried. Not a cry of pain, but of recognition. It was confirmation that love, whether human or stellar, never gets lost. It just changes form. The stone in his hands pulsed in sync with his heart, and when he placed it on the windowsill, the glow stopped, as if saying, now it's your turn to move on. In the following days, things started happening. Small but impossible to ignore. At night, perfect circles of light appeared in the field, visible for only a few minutes before vanishing. Sometimes, the old kitchen radio turned on by itself, emitting a noise that sounded more like a distant melody. Other times, the wind whispered his name, not in a scary way, but as if calling him to remember that the bond still existed. Ethan never told anyone. The people in the village already considered him an eccentric, reclusive man, marked by solitude. He didn't need them to believe. Some truths are so sacred that they lose meaning when explained. So he kept it all to himself, the secret, the memory, and the silent faith that one day he would see them again. As time advanced, he began to write. In his wife's old notebook, now filled with new pages, he described every detail of the encounter, every sensation, every sound. Not to be believed, but so that if one day someone found that diary, they would know that not every miracle is visible, and not every visit from the stars is a threat. The seasons changed. The scars in the earth faded, but the golden circle on the kitchen table remained, pulsing faintly, like a living memory. And every time he touched it, Ethan felt the same warmth, the touch of her, the presence of them. One night, the sky was exceptionally clear. The stars seemed closer, as if the universe had leaned in to listen. Ethan went out to the field, wrapped in a thick coat and a serene gaze. He walked to the clearing where it all began, where the mother had disappeared with the little one amid the light. The wind was calm, and the smell of rain hung in the air. He stood in silence for long minutes, just listening to the rustle of leaves and the distant sound of a coyote. Then he looked at the sky and spoke softly, in a voice mixing faith and longing. I remember too. The echo of his words was lost in the vastness. For an instant, nothing happened, and then the impossible repeated itself. A light cut across the horizon, quick but silent. Then another, and another. They weren't shooting stars nor planes. They were coordinated movements, pulses crossing in precise patterns, as if drawing something in the firmament. Ethan felt his heart race. The lights united and formed for a few seconds, the image of two shining figures, one larger, one smaller, crossing the sky side by side toward infinity. He smiled, unable to hold back the tears. He knew what it was. He knew who they were. For an instant, the wind blew warm, despite the night's chill. The familiar sound, that low, harmonic song, returned to fill the field, as if the very air remembered the melody. Ethan closed his eyes and let his face be bathed in the light. Some miracles don't need to be proven, he thought, just lived. The vision lasted only a few seconds, but time seemed to stretch inside him. When he opened his eyes again, the sky was quiet. The field too. Everything had returned to silence, and it was then that he understood. With the clarity of things that need no explanation, the compassion he had offered had crossed borders that neither death, nor space, nor time could erase. That love, that silent love, nameless, without reward, had become part of the universe's fabric. He looked at the stars once more and whispered, with a firm and serene voice, "If you ever need me again, I'll be here." He entered the house, turned off the lights, and sat by the fireplace, now lit. The fire reflected on the walls, dancing as if carrying ancient memories. Ethan smiled, looked at the golden circle on the table, and passed his hand over it tenderly. The glow responded, faint, almost imperceptible, but alive, and that night, before sleeping, he heard, not with his ears, but with his heart, a distant voice, soft, feminine, crossing the silence of the cosmos, whispering like a breeze between worlds. "Thank you." He closed his eyes and fell asleep smiling, under the sound of the stars. Maybe the universe isn't trying to scare us with the unknown. Maybe it's just testing if we're still capable of caring. Because in the end, it doesn't matter where we come from. Every living being understands the language of love and trust. And if one day the universe knocks on your door asking for help, remember Ethan Parker, an ordinary man who believed in the impossible and discovered that love, when offered without fear, can cross even the stars. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel, share it, and leave in the comments what you would do if the universe one day knocked on your door asking for help. Because maybe, just maybe, someone out there is listening.